we are lucky to have Tom Bogert. You may know him as Major League Soccer and U.S. Men's National Team Insider for Give Me Sport, Soccer Wise, and CBS Sports Golazo. He's everywhere. He's a friend of the Levitard Show, and we are lucky to have him. Welcome to Nothing Personal, Tom. Good morning. How are you?
David, I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. And I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
You look completely awake and rolling. It's early. I know it's early, but man, you do not look the worse for wear. I want to get right to it because in Major League Soccer, we cover it here on Nothing Personal, but certainly we need some expertise. And a story that has caught our attention is what's going on. There's a German legend. He is a German legend. I guess we can call him that, Tom Muller. He wants to transfer to Vancouver, but Cincinnati owns his rights. Can we talk about what the rules are in Major League Soccer? Because that is not exactly how we do it in baseball or in any of the other major sports. What's going on with Muller, and how is this going to end?
Yeah, it doesn't sound so much like free market capitalism in that regard. So the reason why is that it's by design. When MLS was much smaller, when it was fighting for its life in the early 2000s, they had a lot of rules that they lean in a single entity. The whole point of this rule was so teams weren't outbidding each other for the same player, and so that every player didn't just end up in Miami, well, before they had the team, New York, Los Angeles, and whatever. So this is an outdated rule from an outdated time. As stupid as it sounds, it made sense in that era because the league needed to do everything it could just to survive. But right now the league is thriving, and right now the league needs to continue expanding, and they're too slow to take off some of these training wheels that they had to put on. And discovery rights is one of them. So Cincinnati has his rights, and the rules stipulate if you make a fair and genuine offer, and David, you'll know better than anybody, that's a little bit difficult to disprove. If you put any offer on a paper, that's a fair and genuine offer in the eye of the beholder. If you make that offer, then you don't have to automatically lose this player's rights. You get compensated for a player you've never had. And in FC Cincinnati's case, they joined MLS in 2019. Thomas Muller debuted in 2005. So FC Cincinnati, the wording discovery rights doesn't do the league any favors. But this is something that needs to change, and they need to get rid of in the year 2025 of Major League Soccer.
I picture that this was all executives going around to youth soccer fields and saying, oh, look at that 10-year-old, because we try that in baseball in the Dominican. That's going to be a good player. I discovered you. I'm going to lock him up and keep you. And it seems to me that MLS is going to have to change this rule. Will it be retroactive and deal with this issue with Mueller, or is it going to be going forward? And in fact, this Vancouver-Cincinnati situation is a real problem.
So it is a real problem insofar that Vancouver believes Cincy are being unreasonable. Vancouver ended up giving Thomas Muller a bigger offer, and technically they're not supposed to be negotiating if they don't have the rights, but everybody does. Like, there's nobody that's going to be crying about tampering. Cincinnati tried to sign him for a deal that in Major League Soccer you can have three players make whatever you want. It's called a designated player rule. Cincinnati was not going to give him that contract, so he turned them down. He will get that contract next year with Vancouver, but Vancouver can't give it to him now. So overall, Vancouver are going to be giving him more money. So the obvious thing is just let him go. And with Thomas Muller, he is a legend. He's a huge, huge player in the world of soccer, even though he's at the end of his career. It behooves MLS to get him in the league. And if Cincinnati aren't being realistic about what they're asking, I don't know exactly the numbers that they're demanding from Vancouver, the league can step in and put their thumb on the scale and say, listen, like, you need to be reasonable. We need to resolve this. And from my understanding, the league is helping facilitate a resolution in this situation.
You're listening to Tom Bogert, who is an MLS insider, and you just said something that struck me as interesting, which is that he's toward the end of his career, Thomas Muller is, not a youngin'. And so it's reminding me of Beckham and Messi and many other big-time players who come to MLS. I think one of the issues that MLS has in trying to become one of the big four, which it's always tried to do, for 25 years, why is it that my perception, tell me I'm wrong, that it's like a retirement community for famous soccer players around the world who want to come to the U.S. and make some last-minute cash?
A few things that I can disagree with there. So one, I would say you were right about retirement league probably as recently as 2018, 2019. No pushback there. But what the league has done, and this is David Beckham's biggest legacy, I think, in Major League Soccer, is nothing like on the field. He made it more legitimate. He got more eyeballs on it. He got people turning their heads. But what he did for the foundation of this league, the standards of hotels, the standards of travel, the standards of training facilities. Around this time, Major League Soccer were launching development academies to be more like the world of soccer, and they have done that. So since David Beckham left, and all of these kids are starting to graduate academies and get into the league, the level has gotten higher and higher. The training facilities are world class. I talk to U.S. national team players that come from big clubs in Europe, and they say like, "Wow, I'm blown away by FC Cincinnati's training facility. It's better than anything I've ever had in Europe." And these are players at big teams. So that's the first point. The second point is yes, like Lionel Messi would be the best player in France right now, or one of the best players. So he's an alien. You can push him to the side. Thomas Muller is joining a team where he'll be the oldest player by far. This team is in second or third place right now in the Western Conference. They are one of the most positive stories in MLS. If they don't sign him, they will be very good. And that is the difference between like 10 years ago in MLS. You try to sign a player like this for relevancy. You try to sign a player like this to push your team forward. If he doesn't play well, and this is what happened with Olivier Giroud with LAFC. He's France's all-time leading scorer. He won a World Cup, and he was playing in Serie A in Italy, a really big league, and scoring a lot of goals. He came here, he wasn't playing well, and they stuck him on the bench and then got out of his contract a year after he joined. So that is the vast difference in MLS now. And just one more point to this is, yes, like the retirement home moniker is something the league is wary of, and you know, I hear it from fans who maybe don't quite know. I don't ever want this league to be a place that doesn't have Thomas Muller and even Olivier Giroud when it didn't work, Lionel Messi. I want this league to have those players while having the rising young talent, that the level of play continuing to get better. Because if you just want to watch a youth development league, go watch the Brazilian league, go watch the Argentine league, go watch the Dutch league. MLS having a little bit of both is what makes it unique. And they're not chasing the big four sports in MLS. Maybe Garber is, but the big chase is the top 5 leagues in Europe. That is their goal. That is what they're trying to get to.
Yeah, I've always thought actually that Garber was chasing the top 4 in North America, but you bring up a great point, because if they're chasing the top 4 or 5 in Europe, is that the reason why they are talking about a calendar change? Because how can you chase a league and be a summer football league as an example? Well, then you're not going to be a real competitor of the NFL. Is that in the mind of some of the MLS owners that, hey, in order to be them, we have to play when they play?
Exactly. And it helps so much in the global transfer market, because right now MLS's off season is the winter. That's the middle of the season in Europe. It is much more difficult to get transfers done when those two things aren't aligned. So in the summer right now, a lot of European clubs want to do the majority of their signings and departures right now. Well, there's 12 games, 10 games left in the Major League Soccer regular season. They don't want to sell their best players right now. They want to push for the playoffs. So that makes it awkward. What I will say is, people point to, oh, now you're going to be going up against the NFL and college football or other sports, or, you know, maybe your final is going to be near the, you know, NBA finals, Stanley Cup finals. Well, last year, MLS Cup final was on a Saturday in December. It was Championship Saturday in college football. It went directly against Alabama versus Texas, and then I believe the Big Ten championship was the second half of the game. You're not getting any casual sports fans on that day, so that's already not an issue. And I will say, it's a joke that the league hasn't changed the schedule yet. The World Cup was announced 8 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe more. Messi joined 2 years ago. And the idea that they need to do more research and still continue to figure out whether they're going to change the schedule, when the most obvious break for this was after the 2026 World Cup next summer, that is my biggest disappointment. The inaction and the inability to make a quick decision is what is slowing this league down.
Well, I think that every league has an issue with doing things quickly. There are years of study to do anything. I mean, crying out loud, it took 4 years of study to get rid of the intentional walk in baseball and just put up 4 fingers and have the guy go to first base. You're studying the impact, you know, doing an impact statement from 4 different angles. It's the old paralysis by analysis situation. And I understand, because it's a pretty big decision to change the calendar. But they've gone through these sort of decisions and they've gotten to an answer. So the Messi one is an interesting one for me. They came to the conclusion, hey, we'll give them a piece. We'll give them a piece of streaming, which is outrageous and absurd. We're not going to talk about how much it is or how many customers we have, even though Garber sort of intimated and gave us more information than he had ever before. But so they made that decision pretty quickly. And then they made the decision pretty quickly to suspend him and not let him play against Cincinnati after he didn't show up for the All-Star game. So it seems like they're a little selective when they will use speed and when they won't. And targeting Messi, it really was important to me, but I was also surprised by it. What was your reaction?
Yeah, so I think a lot of MLS fans of other clubs would say they were pretty slow and they reluctantly suspended him. And Don Garber kind of said that in a statement to The Athletic, where he was like, this was a really, really difficult decision. And I preface this by saying if I was advising Messi, I would have told him not to play either. Like, just take the suspension, whatever. But the idea that Miami and the camp were like, he's so upset by this, he can't believe this, whatever the phrasing that Jorge Mas used at the press conference. Um, the league had to suspend him
Tom,
because
excuse me. Go back to what you said. If you were advising Messi,
yeah,
you would have advised him to not play
yeah,
in
yeah.
the All-Star game, which is the game of the league that he's trying to build, where he gets profit from more and more exposure to more and more people for Major League Soccer. So I'm sorry. Explain that one to me.
So I care like, and Messi cares more about on-field competitive games than he does the marketing side of things, the business side of things. And yes, like he is the face of the league, but that's not his role. He doesn't do media ever. He doesn't, what he wants to do is be the face of the league by continuing to be one of the best players in the world, which he is. He's played 90 minutes 9 times in the last 35 days. They played on Saturday in New Jersey, fly back to Miami, and then he was going to take a plane to Austin again. I know that he flies in comfort. These are not crazy long trips, but the man is 37, 38 years old. He's played 9 games in 35 days. Are you going to make him go fly and play in this friendly game, this exhibition against the Yankees All-Stars? It's Lionel Messi. What does he need from this? But on the other side, understand that comes with a 1-game suspension and build that into your rest too. And last year, Miami played Cincinnati after the All-Star game. And this is a rule that is long-standing at MLS. If you skip the All-Star game, you suspend a game. Because if they don't do that, Messi would never come. Zlatan Ibrahimovic would never come. Zlatan was somebody who was suspended for skipping the All-Star game. And last year, Luis Suarez, it was a little bit murky, a little bit cloudy, whether or not he was injured to miss the All-Star game, and there weren't enough questions asked. And Miami played Cincinnati after the All-Star game, and Luis Suarez played. I'll tell you, FC Cincinnati fans and people at that club have not let me forget that one. And FC Cincinnati were saying 2 of their best players played in the All-Star game. Their best player has played 150 or 200 less minutes than Lionel Messi this year across all competitions. He could have used a break, but he went and played. So if I'm Cincinnati, I would have been on the league office immediately. You have to suspend him. Why did we send our players, but he gets arrested? He gets to play. So that's the right call. While saying the best thing for Lionel Messi's body was to take a rest.
I'm missing something. He actually gets paid for what he does on the field. He gets paid for what he does off the field. And he actually has a financial incentive to grow the game. Why not get on the private plane, land in Austin, meet a couple sponsors, shake a few hands, kiss a few babies, get introduced, go on the field, and then have the number held up. See you later. 4 minutes of the game. You don't have to run that much. You may not even sweat. You're there. You've done what you're supposed to do. Why would you not advise him to do that plan?
I mean, there's an argument there, but I just think that he's bigger than this. And again, he's earned the right to say, I'm just going to skip this. I'm going to take the rest. He wasn't training at all in Miami this week. He didn't return to training, I think, until Friday morning when they were just still hoping that he wasn't going to get suspended. And I had sources who told me Cincinnati, Friday morning, we're planning for the probability that Messi was going to not get suspended and he was going to play. They didn't find out until after training, right before kind of they made that announcement. So I thought that was interesting. But again, like, if he needs rest, give him rest. And I'm fine with that. It's just, you need to understand that comes with the consequence. This wasn't a surprise. The big surprise would have been if he didn't get suspended. And if he didn't get suspended, the fans of all the other 29 clubs would have been up in arms. Because, by the way, Saturday, they introduced a new player. His name is Rodrigo De Paul. He's a World Cup winner. His nickname in world football is Messi's bodyguard. He's a great player. He's going to join the team for a $17 million transfer fee in the winter. That'll be the second highest fee in league history. He'll have a contract that's probably around $10 million. All of this makes him a designated player in MLS. But for right now, he's joining on a loan, and there's no obligation to pick up his purchase option. So he's able to be added to the team without using a DP spot. So the fans, like the juxtaposition of that, of like, oh, and by the way, your best player isn't getting suspended. The fans around the league would have been, there's two sets of rules, one for them and one for the rest of us. So the league had to suspend Messi.
We've always thought that Inter Miami had power because of Messi, but it seems that Jorge Mas went after Don Garber after the suspension. You think that when he was pushing back, you think he was doing that for the Messi camp just to make sure that they thought that he had their back? Or do we think there's an issue between Garber and Jorge Mas?
More the former than the latter. There's healthy friction from what I've heard in those owners' meetings with Jorge Mas. Jorge Mas is one of the owners that are saying, let's take the training wheels off. Let's spend more. Let's take away some of the restrictions. Again, it doesn't need to be no salary cap or whatever, but let's move it forward and let's do more. Let me sign Rodrigo de Paul without having to jump through hoops and structure the deal in a way that it's legal for us right now. So there's some of the friction. More of the friction has to do with the low spending owners at MLS that have more control and more power. And Jorge Mas is working to chip away, and fans appreciate him for that, even if, in press conferences and stuff, if you're not a Miami fan, you might not love the guy. But I think he's overall really good for MLS, and he's trying to move the league forward. And I'll tell you, he's always entertaining.
So he used the word draconian, and that's what got me going because he and then he dropped Messi's very upset. And I would argue that he is likely, according to what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you have spoken to Messi, he wasn't despondent beyond repair to not play in the All-Star game. He knew that he was going to get suspended, I assume. So what is it? How is it possible that he is upset with the decision?
So I think what Jorge Mas was intimating was a hope, maybe not an expectation, but a hope that, hey, Lionel Messi just played in 9 games, and some of those games were extra games because we were at the Club World Cup. Jorge Mas said this in his press conference. He said Miami's game against PSG at the Club World Cup was reached to 30 million viewers. And this is the first time we're hearing really any numbers, I think, from the Club World Cup. And as you've said in other clips about, just the MLS numbers, 30 million is obviously a massive number. And the whole point is he's the reason why people are tuning in. So, hey, can't you just let it slide? Can't you just let him take this break? Because he played extra games, which was beneficial for the league. And again, I think Garber generally agreed, or at least he was trying to take the tone publicly of this was such a hard decision. We're going to have to look at this rule to try to not be antagonistic to Mas and the Messi camp. But I think that they were hoping that, hey, he's played a lot of games and hey, there's extra competitions and all this. And no. And again, I firmly believe that they couldn't bend on that one, but I guess Miami were hoping they were going to.
Do you look back on the Apple deal? It's gotten a lot of attention recently. Do you look back on the Apple streaming deal as a mistake? Do you look at it as the right decision at the time that has not worked? Or do you look at it as a decision where it's still TBD whether it was the right decision?
So I think it was the right decision at the time. That's where everything was going. And I do like other leagues have started to try to line up their deals to make it more central like this and with streaming services, and Apple TV seems a really good partner to be at. So I'm not going to do revisionist history and suggest this was obviously bad, even though that there was the worries of, will it reach casual fans? What is the price point going to be? What is going to make sense? Those are all things that they're still working through. I think one of the things that I would love to see changed in the future, if this deal does continue, is more reasons to go to MLS Season Pass on a non-game day. I would like to see some of the games spread out a little bit more, so that the biggest issue that I hear from fans and even again sources in the league, if most of the teams, if not all the teams, are playing at 7:30 p.m. local time on a Saturday, if you're the head coach of a club, you can never watch any other game live. If you're a broadcaster calling one of those games, you can never watch another of these games live. And you think about the NFL. How many different windows are NFL games in? Keep it to soccer, Serie A, Italy. There's like 7 different windows for 10 games that they're playing every weekend. And MLS wants to have more games at once. They want to have continuity for the fans because the biggest selling point is the fans in the stadium. And again, more of the money is coming from fans in the stadium than a TV deal right now. And they wanted to have their whip around red zone style show have more games on at once. There's 30 teams in this league. You can still do that while saying, hey, Miami, you're going to play it at 3 p.m. on a Saturday or on a Sunday in September or whatever. And you get more viewers watching Lionel Messi games and Inter Miami games and marquee games. So that's a big thing that I want to see change, and I hope that we get there.
You want to know the best way to know that your league is growing? It's when you do not say that game day revenue is the driver.
Yep,
You need to be able to say, no, no, it's the media rights deal that's the driver. And
agreed.
that is when in the NHL really can't say it, MLS can't say it, but an NBA and NFL can, and MLB wants to. So where you are with media rights deals, and my issue with the Apple streaming deal is that I thought it was premature. You've got leagues that have gone through. Major League Baseball is looking at streaming more. NFL did streaming deals, and those are leagues that were mature leagues. And my thought was MLS was not mature enough to hide it behind a streamer because people don't have it within them to search the extra step or pay the extra step at a place that they don't normally go to. And MLS wants to be there but isn't. That was my thought of it.
I think that is completely fair, and going down that kind of thought process. I have, anecdotally, I have a couple friends who would go to Philadelphia Union games, probably, around 12 of their 17 home games a season. And I was, talking to them, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, did you get season pass? They're like, absolutely not. Like, $95? You kidding me? I was like, dude, like, you can go to one game, your ticket, a couple beers, and parking. That's the price of season pass for a season. And he's like, no, I don't care. Like, I'm not paying for it. So it's difficult. Like, you do as much market research as you want. Like, how do you get over that hurdle? And like you said, and that's somebody who was a fan of the league or is a fan of the league, just doesn't watch any of the games now unless he's going to them. So it's a quandary. It's difficult because you want to partner with Apple. You want to be on the cutting edge. But like you said, you're not getting any casuals stumbling in.
Tom, we only have a couple minutes left. I want to switch to the U.S. men's national team, which is one of the areas in which you are an insider and obviously incredibly knowledgeable. We've got the World Cup coming up. Is it too early? I can't even do this with a good conscience, Coca. I'm not going to ask him, hey, are they going to win the World Cup? Just give me a little scouting report here for our audience. Is the U.S. men's national team, what shot do we have in the World Cup?
If
Realistically.
you asked me this after the 22 World Cup, I would have said there's a real chance for them to be semifinalists. Right now, man, get to the knockout rounds. It's been really, really bad over the last 4 years between these World Cups. Young players haven't developed. Chief among them is Gio Reyna. He was viewed as one of the best young players in the world, and he has completely fallen off a cliff. The manager was fired. They got eliminated in the group stage at the Copa America. They lost in the Nations League. And the new managers come in, and there's starting to be some questions about him and about he's publicly fighting with his best player. They're not winning things. Like they did pretty good at the Gold Cup this summer with a lot of players missing, but still they needed a penalty shootout to beat Costa Rica. Guatemala pretty much barely, like they were holding on for dear life in the end, and then they got played off the field by Mexico in the final. So vibes are really bad right now, to say the least. And I don't know how you recover it because they don't have any more competitive games until next summer. So we'll have to take any positive signs we can. But I'll tell you right now, things don't look good.
Well, that was the most depressing scouting report of the U.S. men's national team ever. We didn't rehearse that. I wanted you to be upbeat and say, yeah, we've been struggling, but we have just enough runway. We're going to be in there. And the value right now when people don't think they're going to be good, what great value. Our friends at DraftKings, let's go. Instead, you were like putting up the umbrella like Wile E. Coyote, looking at the other men's national teams, saying, that's the U.S. They're all falling on us like boulders. Totally despondent, but not having spoken to you, that's amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. It's not easy coming in the morning live at 7:53 a.m., but thank you for doing that. And can we do this again? There's so much more soccer to talk about.
I love that, Samson. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Cheers.